Welcome, everyone, as we come together to chat about Dance Series 2 at Smeon Ballet. We just finished our season this past weekend in Carmel, and it was bittersweet to put this program away, but it's lovely that we'll be able to see it through the month of June. This is a wonderfully varied program that challenged our dancers individually, but also allowed them the opportunity to work again as a full company. After 2 seasons of working in small pods, we were ready to break out and dance in larger groups. I invited 2 of our artists to expand duets that had been created last year, and also selected 2 of the larger works in our repertoire to revive. These are ballets that require real focus in working together to achieve an artistic goal. So during the pandemic, when we had 1, 2, we didn't have more than 5 people on the stage together. It was really great to come together, and that energy that I think the audience even feels when a large group of dancers, when I say large, 16 or 17 dancers, that's large for Smeon. When we come together and dance in unison, it's just so powerful. But let's start by discussing our 2 opening works by Smeon artists, Tessa Barber and Brennan Wall. I should have opened by mentioning our choreographers tonight. In addition to Tessa and Barber, we have Amy Seiwert and Val Canaparoli. And then our ballet master, Amy London, also joining me today. So Tessa and Brennan, I wanted to also mention and thank once again Harvey Lynch, who sponsored these works. The importance of giving our dancers this chance to create, which they fully took advantage of during the pandemic. But let's start with you, ladies. And I want to ask you if there were any challenges to expanding these works that were initially created to stand alone. How did you approach that? What was your process? Brendan, would you like to start with that?
Hi, everybody. It's interesting because when Celia asked if I wanted to expand something, I thought about it for a second and then said, yes, I think I'd like that. Of course, I was overjoyed by that opportunity, but I had 2 pieces I could choose from. And one of them, Interlude, was a little bit more jazzy. And for a while, I thought, I'm going to expand Interlude. And I kept looking for music, and it was to Duke Ellington music. And I was looking everywhere, and I just couldn't put it together. I didn't have a story. I didn't have anything. And I just felt like, well, I can't expand Untwine because I just need more time for that. I just need to be more established before I touch on something like that, because I was very proud of that piece. And then finally I thought, okay, well, why don't I just see what it would look like? And within 5 minutes, I'd found music for that piece, and I had a storyline. And so I think it's easy when you have something that inspires you to be able to expand on it. It was an amazing opportunity because the piece itself, Untwined, the duet that I created in 2021, was one of the most favorite things I've ever done. And so to be able to add on to something that already inspires you, I think at least for me, it came a lot easier than I expected it to, because I was already so excited about the piece I'd already set there. So I think as long as you're, I don't know, at least in the future, as long as you go forward with intention and inspiration and excitement in each thing, I think the next step kind of just shows itself along the way. And that was at least the case for me.
You expanded your work for 8 couples, ultimately, adding 3 couples. How did you decide on that? The numbers?
I knew that I wanted it to be as many people on stage as possible while having 2 casts. And so there's the lead couple, which first cast was Cassidy Isaacson and Brandon Alexander, and they're who I initially set the piece on. So I knew that I wanted them to be separate. And then I wanted to have, this separate group of people on stage. And so initially I was thinking of having 3 couples, and I just needed, the more that I thought about it, I just needed the space to be filled. So it was really fun because I got to talk about casting with Tessa, and we talked about, who we wanted and how we could make our cast work together. And I said, well, we have these dancers that we're not using. Can I take them? Can I make it bigger? And so I think I just needed as many people as possible. And so three extra couples along with the 4 couples as a complete, just sort of became what it was, because that was what I was left with, and I'm really happy with how that turned out, actually.
It was beautiful, and Bahar had a wonderful comment, how much she enjoyed your work. She
Thank you.
said, "Congratulations, Brennan. That duet was so beautiful." Well, I was so proud of both of you ladies for taking on this challenge. It's intimidating to appear on the main stage with other choreographers. And let me ask Tessa, I don't know if I'm frozen or is Tessa maybe frozen? There you are. Tessa, I would love to ask you also about your process and how you went about expanding your piece and selecting your music.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I think my internet is a little wavy at the moment, so I apologize if I cut in and out. But it was such an honor getting the opportunity to create something for the first time on the main stage. The biggest challenge, I think, for myself was sharing the opportunity. Established choreographers, Amy and Val. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. Am I back? Am I glitchy?
You're back now.
Oh, now she's freezing for me.
No. Is it happening? Am I here?
Now you're back. Now you're back, Tessa.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
I don't know, Tessa, if you can turn off other things that might be running on your internet or if any other apps are open. Sometimes that can help.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that sounds actually very clear.
Okay, great. I changed nothing, so we'll see how long it lasts. I'll try to talk quickly, but I think my biggest challenge was just the nervousness of coming, setting something on the stage at the same time with Amy and Val. I look up to both of these choreographers so highly, and there's a lot of pressure that might come with having something come out on the main stage for the first time. So I think my biggest challenge was honestly stepping into my own confidence and realizing that it's not about making something that's better than anyone else's. It's enjoying in the moment what you're creating. And I think as soon as I kind of let that take over, it kind of took the fear and anxiety away from trying to create something that's incredible, and instead of creating something that I enjoy seeing. And I had such an incredible time working with all of the dancers and Amy London helping me out in the front of the room. And just kind of having open dialogue with the dancers and, how does that feel? Is it good? Is it terrible? And having, the opportunity for every dancer to have their voice and kind of come together as a collective. I'm ultimately just really, really pleased with how it all came out, and I feel really lucky to have been able to use not only costume designer Tess Lane and dancer, but my musicians were friends of mine from high school over 10 years ago in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they live in Boston, and we were able to kind of connect and create, just have a collaboration. My first time ever having to work with musicians at the same time, and there was just so many new firsts for me at the same time, and it just felt like being present and open and willing to see what happens. I think it all just kind of worked. So really thankful. And yeah, it was absolutely incredible.
Well done, Tessa. And it was exciting to see how you collaborated with your friends, the musicians. And I just loved it because every so often I'll see something and just go, I would love dancing that. And that's what I had, the feeling of that was just dance for the pure sake of dancing. And yet you still captured the moods of the different movements. Did you have trouble pinning those moods and those styles with those dancers, or you knew right away which dancers were going to be doing the fast or doing the legato?
I knew immediately, who I envisioned, where I think that's a really cool element, to be able to know your coworkers so well. And not that we're trying to typecast or say that, oh, only this person can move quickly. Like, you're not trying to just maintain those sort of ideas, but when you're given a piece of music and you have to make really quick decisions, you kind of just go with what and who's going to grasp on the quickest, and just fully see your vision come to life. So hearing the music and kind of mapping out my 3 couples, I feel like I was I had a pretty good idea of what I was after. And, but if I had switched it around, I think they would have done just as an incredible job. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Tessa. I should mention also that if any of our audience have any questions, you could send them to Amy London, and she's going to be manning our chat box. So if there's anything that we haven't touched on and you have a burning desire to know, anything within reason, let's chat next about confessions. Val's Ballet was generously sponsored by David Metters. And Val, I must say, you are one of the most prolific choreographers working internationally today. We're so honored to get to work with you. And I also want to congratulate you on your upcoming 50th anniversary with the San Francisco Ballet. An incredible, incredible achievement. I know when Michael Smuin was directing there, he gave you opportunities to create on the company. And, before we start talking about confessions, I would like to know how that impacted your work as a choreographer and your desire to keep choreographing, that you were given those early opportunities, as Michael gave to Amy Seiwert.
Right. Well, what's great is, I didn't start as a dancer. I started really late. So I studied in college, music, theater, everything but dance. And I sort of fell into this profession, which is weird. But it's getting in the company after one year in the school, San Francisco Ballet, and the Christensens were directing at that point, and then Michael Smuin came in. And I remember just always choreographing for student groups or my colleagues and such. And Michael found out I wanted to choreograph. And so giving that opportunity was amazing. And that was in, 1985. I think I was 12. No, I'm kidding. But no, it was great watching the company and what Michael brought in and Lou Christensen, the variety of different types of choreographers. Even if I wasn't chosen in the ballet, I would just sit and watch these people choreograph. And what was great is I also found out in an early age that you pick out those dancers that are going to be injured, and learn that part and you get to do the ballet. I learned that. So any dancer that comes up to me now, can I learn this part or can I do that? I absolutely say yes right away. Yeah, learn it. Great. So I do that quite often. But yeah, just Michael, letting me create so much was amazing. And then the word got out. I started choreographing all over the world, all different places. It was like, I was lucky. I was really lucky, in the right place, the right time. And
well, I think you might have had a little ability there.
Well, hopefully. But my viewpoint on choreography is much different than if I had started at 6, 7, or 8. And I take great pride in that. I have a different outlook. I don't know any more than what I know, and that's how I create. That's how I work. I don't look back and go, boy, if I would have known how to do better double tours or triple this or that, boy, I would have choreographed it a lot better. But no, just my whole background, it was just different. So a lot of my work is theatrical, like Confessions is. There's a lot of that in there. But like I say, you do what you know, and you add to that.
But it's impressive. Just like Michael was such a varied choreographer. You could have an all Michael program and not know that was the same choreographer. Just like a Dance Series 1, we had 2 distinct ballets of Amy Seiwert. So in the same way, Val, I don't see you as saying, I can definitely say, oh, this is a Caniparoli ballet, but you would never look at an evening and say, Val has a style, or Val has you have stayed so inventive. You've never put yourself into a niche. You have, it's just incredible. And I know you've worked with so many companies, and I'm just wondering, when you are creating something on a company, how important is it for you to know the dancers before you come up with your choreographic idea or concept that you would pitch to an artistic director?
Right.
How much does the cast affect what you create?
Yeah. Well, in many ways, a lot, because the dancers do affect how I create wherever I go. But it's not necessarily. It's great when you've created on a company many times, like I have with SMU, and they know you and they can second guess you. They can, they know they can speak up and they can be contributors and such. I don't have issues if I don't know the company of the dancers when I go in, because I know eventually they will start to get into that, but it takes longer. But, oh, wait a minute, I have a voice. I can say something. I can say that hurts, that doesn't work, or I can suggest something else. I go, my gosh, speak up, you guys. Let's have fun, and I think once they see that I'm not an ogre, well, maybe I am, I don't know, but that they're contributors. I just think that if the dancers feel that they're part of the process, they take ownership, and the ballet's a lot better. If you're just sitting there dictating, this is what it is, this is going to do. I didn't like to be in those ballets when I was a dancer in San Francisco Ballet. I liked those choreographers. They let me have a voice. I went, this is amazing. This is great. So I learned a lot in that way. So yes and no. It just takes longer if they don't know you. But I have a great way. I can tell right away who I want to use, don't want to use. I don't do, many choreographers do weeks of auditions when they're in the company. I can watch a class and go, let's, you're all good. Let's just all do it. But I don't have that. I have a good knack of like, I think they're going to be good. And I'm 99% of the time I'm correct. So and I love that dancer that's in the back. Because I was always in the back. I was never that good technically because I started so late. So I was so happy when that choreographer would pick me. One in particular was Jerome Robbins. I was way in the back row when Michael brought him in to do the first ballet that we had done of Jerome Robbins, and it was called Moves. And oddly enough, he picked me for one of the leads. I was way in the back. I couldn't do a double pirouette to save my life, but I love the fact that he saw something in me, and I'll never forget that. I never have forgotten that.
That's so great. With Confessions, how did you discover this unusual recording? Were you already familiar with Nico Muhly's work, or do you? How did that come about?
Yeah, I love Nico Muhly's work, and I was searching, and I think we were discussing a lot of different types of music, and which I'm just all over the place with music because I love all types of music. And I think a couple things slipped through because of rights and stuff that I was going to do for you, which I eventually did with another company, but that's another story. But I think just it came up on this music and I listened to it. And I love Baroque music. And this was like a contemporary Baroque, point of view. And I think what was great about it was the viewpoint was already in the ballet itself. It was called Confessions. And the music was written about when the internet first came out. We were all just obsessed with putting our mundane lives on video, from what we ate, who we're dating, we're doing that, it was, and putting it all over, splash all over. Lo and behold, we didn't know the consequences of that. And a lot of this is based on that. And we based a lot of the choreography on this. So it was built in. And I went, wow, this is a great concept. And I love the music. And I sent it to you and you liked it. It was great. Okay. I always make sure the artistic director likes the music as well. Because as you know, the music has to fit into a program. Like I'll ask you, Sal, is it going to be do you want a beginning, middle, or end? Do you want an abstract? Do you want a storyline? What else is on the program? Is the music? You don't want the music all to be the same. So that's part of, so running that by you was, I thought you just have to do that. But you liked it, so it's great.
I also have to like it because I watched the performance about 20 times. So
yes, yeah. Truly.
Oh, not that it's just about me, but it does affect what Amy and I will choose for the Christmas ballet.
That's right. Oh, that's
oh.
right.
Well, it was something to watch the dancers in your ballet, Val, and I know how much they enjoyed that. And again, it was almost like those endorphins would kick in. And when the curtain opens and everyone is just frozen in place, and then all of a sudden they jump into action and everybody just moving with such precision. Thanks to Amy London's cracking the whip on those rehearsals and really getting that.
Not easy stuff.
No, not easy stuff. And working with Ben Needham Wood in the staging of these ballets, to see that precision. And I think it was even more precise this time around, but it was pretty extraordinary to see that come together. And it's always lovely when those dancers that have been in it before, like Tessa and John and Therese, to visit that again. It's familiar in your body, but you can also know where to push and where to expand and get something else out of it. Tessa, as a dancer, how was that for you revisiting Confessions?
I think I can speak for everyone when we say we love this piece. So, even though we did it, 3-4 years ago, time is all relative, but it's one of those ballets that you remember specific moments from. And because often, when you don't have to remember a ballet, it just, goes right out the brain. And this is a piece that, like, if we, Therese and I would get on talking about it, we would start to move around and we would remember the choreography coming in. And, and it's so fun that your body, that muscle memory is still there. And you kind of hit it on the head, being able to revisit and see like, okay, I think I've progressed a little bit more as a dancer. Let's see, if I can do this a different way than I did last time and bring something new to the piece. And, having that opportunity to challenge yourself is always just, really, really lovely. And as us dancers are always striving for perfection, I think there's a part of us that always wishes, oh, if I could try that one more time, I would nail that. So it's always really satisfying to, get to bring it back. And I would say the same thing with Renaissance as well. I know we're not there yet, but it feels very similarly.
Thank you, Tessa. And that's a perfect entree to chat about Amy Sywart's beautiful Renaissance, co-sponsored by Barbara Bessey and Fred Turman and Nan Borison. So thank you for your generous support to help us make our art, especially in these challenging times. We're so grateful. In the case of these ballets in particular, it seems like the music selection preceded any choreographic ideas. But Amy, can you tell us about your inspiration for Renaissance?
Sure. I just want to say real fast to Tessa and Val. Tessa, your duet with John in Confessions, could, I don't know how many times I could watch that and just be utterly satisfied each and every time. So brilliant. Val brilliantly created and crafted and just beautifully danced every time through. So one of my
Thank
favorite
you.
moments. Every time it starts, I'm like, "Ooh, here we go." Okay, so, all right, so yeah, the music for Renaissance. So the music is
Or the idea, the
yeah,
idea.
So yeah, the idea. How do I put it? The Kitka's music I've known forever. I know people who sing in the group. It's a cappella women's vocal ensemble based in Oakland, and they do predominantly Eastern European music. So that music is something that's been sitting, in a playlist that I wanted to create for years before I actually decided to use it for Renaissance. And I was searching for the base of this ballet, and I was driving and I heard this story about the Women's Wall in India. And it happened on January 1st, 2019, and it was a gender equity protest. And the estimate, I don't know how an estimate can be this big, but somewhere between 3 to 5 million women standing across the state in India holding hands. It's about a 400-mile long chain of women, the fourth longest human chain ever on record for being made. And what I loved about it also is that the men in these women's life who were supporting them stood across the road in solidarity. So they were amplifying their voices without interjecting, which I thought was pretty great. And then the thing that also struck me is I didn't hear anything about this other than that one radio program. Like, I had to search for information about it to hear more. So it barely made a blip on the radar of the national news in the U.S. So I kind of dug deeper into what had happened there. And meanwhile, sitting on my shelf is this Kitka music and those women's voices and the power and the solidarity and the strength in their voices. And I was like, I know Eastern Europe and India, like, I know they're not supposed to be able to it's not the most obvious pairing, but I just kept coming back to the strength of those voices. And I felt like that's where I wanted to start. So yeah, put them together. It's a little bit of a weird hybrid of a soup, but I think it worked.
It sure did work. On Saturday in Carmel, after the lights went up after the performance, the man behind me was weeping, and he thanked me for the beautiful piece. He was so moved, as were many. You have obviously had this opportunity to work with Simeon so frequently, and obviously during your 10 years as choreographer in residence. And how does that impact your ability to create? As I was asking Val, like, when you know the dancers as opposed to coming in, how does that change your process, or how do you quickly get to know dancers that you don't know and you've got to create on them? It seems like it would be a challenging thing.
Yeah, I think exactly what Val said, how the dancers will start finishing your sentences for you creatively. They know your style, they know the things, they know the choices that are going to make you really happy. And what's great about that is it kind of ups the baseline of what you can do creatively, because you've already got a common language, you've got a common way of working, and there's a lot of trust that's already been established in the studio. They're not proving anything to me. I'm not proving anything to them. We're just creating together. And so that's a really beautiful place to be able to get to, and it only happens with history.
That's great. And I've heard both you, Amy, and Val often speaking about collaborating, which is something that is not historically true with ballet. Usually ballet dancers are used to being told what to do and where to stand and how to go into something and a lift or what to try. And there isn't that conversation and that back and forth. And it's something that both of you have really made a part of your process in terms of how you work with companies, whether you know them or not, in terms of knowing the dancers too, and like technically what they're able to do or artistically. I think of the first cast of Renaissance, and Erin Yarbrough figured so prominently. And how do you then approach a ballet when you're coming back around and we have new dancers, new spots to fill? And in some ways it becomes a slightly different work, which is so interesting to see. How do you approach that?
For me, and Val, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but for me, it's about keeping the intention more than keeping the steps. Like yes, you don't want to suddenly change everything, but it's like altering clothes, right? You're going to make it fit those dancers seamlessly. So you might shift some things here or there. Erin Yarbrough is a stunning dancer. Tess Lane is a stunning dancer. I don't want Tess to try to be Erin. I want Tess to be Tess, So how do you find the intention and shift it to this different body that has different strengths? It's the same choreography, but it becomes differently shaded, and the contours change, and it's what keeps it alive.
That's great. Val, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that is eloquently said, actually. No. What's great, and Amy probably will agree, it's choreographers these days are meant to be geniuses right away. We don't have previews like theater does, or movies to go out of town, try things, no critics. We have very limited time on stage. So a lot of times, if your ballet is lucky enough to survive the barrage of criticisms on that opening night, that's when the work starts. That's when many times I go, I should have done that, I could have done that, oh, let's try this. And having different dancers and different approaches, I think it's magical. It really is. And it's a great time after a ballet opens and it's successful enough to go through the years and other dancers work on it. You can work on it. But I do have to say really quick, confessions, I think I told both you and Amy that I think this was the first time ever that it didn't change a single step. Usually it's like changing here and phrasings and maybe the music or this, which was really bizarre for me because I went through it. Of course, the dancers, like Amy said, they morph it into something different, whatever, but wow, I was like, I didn't have to do anything when it was brought back, which thank you, Sel, for
Yes.
bringing it back.
You're welcome, Val.
Really,
you're welcome.
yeah.
And thank you, Amy London. Amy London, can you talk about how, what your process working with Ben, which is so helpful when you have somebody who danced in it, and also physically did a lot of the partnering and some of those tricky lifts that Val had were in Renaissance that Amy had. What was your process like bringing it back? Does it come back into your body and mind like it did for Tessa, say, when she was reviewing it?
Less in my body because I didn't dance it, but in my mind and in my notes. And it was really great working with Ben because he was in the original cast of both ballets and it was in his body physically. And we worked together well. And so we were able to kind of divide and conquer and kind of make a plan for restaging the ballets. We had a question in the chat from Jane asking how much time they had to bring these ballets back to life. And so the process was about 2 weeks, a little less, 2 weeks for each ballet to get it initially staged on these groups of dancers. and then bringing the choreographer in. Amy Seiwert saw it late in the process for her ballet, and Val saw it earlier in the process for his ballet while we were, he came in and worked style when we were in the earlier stages. And both ways of going about it work, just to be able to put the choreographers, you know, spit and polish and the intention on the steps. But I have pretty good notes on both ballets. Both choreographers are very supremely musical. And in my notes, I always try to write things down that they've said or priorities, things beyond the steps to help keep the flavor of the ballet intent, the intent of the flavor in there, more like they're saying, more so than the actual right, left, right, the feeling behind it. And I also had a lot of videos that I had taken in the studios during the creation process of both ballets. So was able to go back and show them the initial base phrase that Seiwert used to create the choreographic language of the whole ballet. That phrase doesn't actually exist as she started with it really in the ballet, but all the ingredients are there. And so kind of being able to go back to the original source a little bit helps, I think, in maintain the intent behind the ballets.
Absolutely. So you have to be good at not only writing down the notes, but also that aid of the visual. Oftentimes we're asked, how are ballets restaged and how are they taught? And although there are some forms of dance notation, it seems they're less in use. Formal methods of dance notation, Laba notation and Benesh, I don't know. It's fewer and fewer that I hear using these techniques because we all use video, and I see the dancers using their own phones to record rehearsals or what have you. Tessa and Brennan, did you find yourselves notating your ballets? I know you were filming it, and we'll get each of you copies of the works that we had filmed from the theater. But what was that process for you if someone were ever to do your ballet again?
I think I got very reliant on Amy London's capabilities for that. She's very skilled at writing all of that down, and I actually think one of my biggest challenges is remembering what I said, because it comes out very quickly, and I think, okay, this is what I want. You know, once I find it, then it's there, but as soon as it's out, it's gone. So that's, you know, definitely a challenge for me. I would write down a couple things before I came into the studio in a notebook, but it's so funny. I would look at my notes and then look over at Amy's notes and think this is so unorganized compared to the mathematics going on to my right. So it was such a joy having Amy in the room to be able to keep track of everything, because there was some areas that got very complicated, and so I would ask her, okay, well, I don't know which 6 we're on anymore, and she would have it all written down. And so I think if I were to, you know, theoretically restage something like that, I would ask Amy, okay, so where are the notes? And I think now I've become so reliant on video, you know, and rewatching which is just it's amazing that we're able to document everything like that. So I think I would just go back to the video. But yes, Amy, thank you so much for all your work. She really is incredible at that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brennan. And Tessa, would you like to add to that?
I would say she said this very eloquently. I agree the same. You know, I think for me, starting the process, I don't necessarily start with steps, but I start by counting the music and mapping out a general sort of idea. So I think my notebooks are filled with phrases and counts and potential changes or a running pattern. So they're a mumble jumble of scribbles, and no actual steps are written down. But, if I'm teaching a tap class, I would write that down. I normally, like, I do write information down, but when you're in this like new creation process, I think if I had written down a step and given it to the dancers, I would have immediately changed my mind and been like, wait, I'm not setting it on me, I'm setting it on you. And so, I really stepped into every day with more of a broad general idea. And then Amy, she's the one that colors and has wonderful pictures.
That's great. I can remember Michael sometimes when he was trying to figure out a choreographic pattern, he would use coins and to be able to sort of like shift, this one's going to run here, or this is the formation they're going to be getting into. How will they get into that? There's a lot of geometry in choreography, certainly. And both of you really challenged yourselves in how you worked the groupings and worked the dancers. So it was not just straightforward, and I applaud you for that, because I know that the first time Michael asked me to choreograph, and I had never choreographed, not like Amy, who had been choreographing since she was so young and was always interested in choreography. And Michael said, "Oh, I want you to create something for the Palace," and I just about had a heart attack. So I'm glad you've had some breaking in to get used to the idea. Amy London, do we have any more questions in our chat box?
We do. We have a question from Harvey for Val. It says, senseless shootings have been an increasingly serious problem in the US in the past decade. In Confessions, why did you choose not to make a positive statement at the end by having the man visibly reject the gun instead of accepting it?
You're muted, Val.
I decided to keep that in because nothing was done. You don't know if he rejected the gun or not. Nothing was overt. We see worse things on commercials, in TV, in the news, way, way worse. And I just thought nothing was done. It's in your imagination. If that's what you think, what he's going to do or she's going to do, it's not spelled out. And so there wasn't actual violence, but I think I chose to keep it in because it was very significant to me. And I wanted to stay true to myself. And I think that's ultimately, as a choreographer, that's what you should do. And there's no other explanation other than that. The ballet was about what has been put on, what we put on the internet. And I didn't want to back down on the negativity. And that is negative. And it makes a point, and I didn't want to back down on that. There's no other explanation other than that.
Okay, thank you, Val.
Sure.
Amy, anything else?
That's it that has come to me in the chat box.
Okay, I think that's it. If anyone else has any question for us, we're right at 7 o'clock. We hoped to wrap by now. I want to thank all of you once again. First, our choreographers for sharing your beautiful work with all of us at SMUN and the audience. Amy London, again, for your work as ballet master, finishing your 14th season as ballet master, as I finish my 15th season as artistic director at SMUN Ballet. So it takes a village, certainly. But thank you all so much for tuning in today. Have a safe and healthy summer, and we hope to see all of you in the theater in the fall. Thanks again.